Well, we usually say thanks to God it's Friday, or thank God it's Friday, or something along those lines when we're opening up a program. I've been told by consultants, don't say that. It sounds like you don't want to be working 7 days a week. Yeah. That might be true. Actually, here at the radio station, a great many people are working 7 days this week because of the Home and Garden Show, and we'll be talking about that a little later in the program once more, opening up today at the campus of Southern Idaho. And I'll be there, in fact, myself. I've got a couple of shifts to handle the desk and the microphone for the public address announcing. But other than that, I have a 6-day week. Most of my coworkers on the FM side of the dial, they're the ones who are doing all of the big business, the heavy lifting with remote broadcast this weekend. So they're going to work straight through the weekend and then tee it all up, do it all over again come Monday morning. And I think I have some time off tomorrow where I can just maybe sneak off and see a good movie, if there is such a thing right now. The good one I saw, that was a couple of weeks ago when I went to see American Sniper. Academy Award nominations are all in, of course, and it's one of the films nominated for Best Picture. But judging by the politics around it, I think by the time we get to Sunday night, it's not going to finish in the running, just because the Academy, most of those people are politically sensitive, we should put it that way, and they'll react accordingly, and they'll select another film whether or not it is as good as American Sniper. Some of the other things we're talking about today. Planned Parenthood was warning in a newspaper column a few days ago about a new system, not Planned Parenthood, excuse me, Idaho Right to Life, warning about Planned Parenthood using remote cameras to give instructions to people to conduct abortions. So we're going to be talking a little later in the program with an individual representing Planned Parenthood of Idaho, or not Planned Parenthood. I got to get this straight. I know I'm eager on a weekend to say, all right, we're done, but we've got actually another hour and 50 minutes to go. So our spokesman is joining us from Right to Life here in Idaho. No, we got that straight. Okay, good. They're going to have someone come into the booth any moment now and give me a big slap. So I have to make sure that I get that straight on a Friday morning especially. Also coming up a little bit later in the program, we're going to be talking to a representative, Ella Donahue from CSI, the College of Southern Idaho, just about some activities that are going on there this weekend as well, aside from the Home and Garden Show. And she'll be joining us, in fact, about 10 minutes or so to give us a rundown on all of that. And an old coworker of mine, actually, Doug Beatty and I once worked together as galley slaves, in fact, at our last radio station, and the two of us are no longer there. Despite the fact that we got much higher ratings than the guy that replaced us, nobody seemed to want us. But Doug Beatty is one of the foremost experts that I know of anywhere around the country when it comes to issues like the Second Amendment. And Doug is going to join us in the next hour of the show, spend a few minutes with us talking about some. He's an avid outdoorsman in the first place. He loves to go fishing, kayaking, and he's been on. He was telling me a story one time about going out and doing some White River rafting with Burt Reynolds when he was a kid. If you're familiar with the story, of course, his dad actually played in a movie with Burt Reynolds where they did some White River rafting. But Doug is his own man. And I will make that clear that he has been a success in his own life at a number of different things that he has taken on and challenges that he has happened to meet over the course of his lifetime. But he apparently ticked off Burt Reynolds when they were out doing some whitewater rafting. And Reynolds was trying to, how shall we put it, be sweet to some ladies who were on the trip. And Doug said something that was a put down of Reynolds, and Reynolds never invited him along again. But we're going to have him here today. We don't have any of those issues with him. He'll be joining us a bit later, coming up in the next hour. 10 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you today. 36 at our studios. My sister woke to 13 below zero this morning. I said to her, "What's it like?" And she said, "Better than it has been all week." I said, "What do you mean better? It's 13 below." She said, "Well, the wind isn't blowing." And she said it didn't get as cold as the weather forecast. Can you tell the difference between 13 below and 18 below or 20 below? Is it really? It's bone-chilling cold no matter how you look at it. I think we have to acknowledge that. There is a story. I happened to see this. I got home yesterday after work and did some shopping on the way home. But before I really get rolling today, I happened to see this. I put this in the column of "This guy must be a really big idiot." And this was picked up by newspapers here in Idaho. It's all over the Associated Press, and it has made national news. I found it at the website of the Daily Caller. Idaho College administrators swapped grants for sex, police say. And the writer says a former administrator, now get that former because he's not working there any longer. You'll know why in a minute. At an Idaho community college faces 5 felony charges after police say he offered students financial aid in exchange for sex. Joseph Becken was arrested Wednesday on suspicion of soliciting prostitution and misusing public funds. Becken was the financial aid director for North Idaho College. So he is no longer, in case you're wondering why. He went to Craigslist. You want to talk about a guy who's a few bricks shy of a load? He posted at Craigslist this is the exact post. Hello, I have a proposition for NIC students. Email me and we can discuss M4W, M4M, and M4MW. What that means is he was looking for sex, either man and woman, or man and man, or a threesome of any variety. And so somebody actually approached him who happened to be an undercover agent, and the undercover agent approached him and said, I'm interested in being a student. So he ended up depositing a grant in the amount of nearly $600 in this student's bank account. And then he went to a motel where he thought he was going to meet the student for a little bit of ooh la la. And unfortunately, someone slapped handcuffs on him and dragged him away. He's got a wife and children, or he did. Well, I'm sure he still has the children. You can't really divorce them. But the wife is likely on her way out the door after all of this. This guy is going to be in some serious, serious trouble. And you have to ask, how steep is the learning curve of people even in academia at times? We've talked about that. You've got Howard Dean saying that Scott Walker is too dumb to be president of the United States because Scott Walker left college early, took a job, and became a huge success. Then you've got this guy who's working in the administration of a college here in Idaho who's probably got degree after degree after degree. You don't get a job at any university with anything less than a master's degree anymore. And look at where he ends up. I mean, I find that to be... I'm sorry, but maybe Howard Dean needs to rephrase all of this. And then I have one other thing on the state level that I wanted to address very quickly at the opening of the program because I wasn't sure we were going to get to it a little bit later. From the Associated Press, the legislative panel is recommending that a 151-year-old Idaho law on duels be repealed. Now, they're happening every day. I see 2 or 3 of them on Blue Lakes Boulevard when I go out shopping in the afternoons. It says the rule on the books since Idaho's very first legislature as a territory gives the gem state jurisdiction over out-of-state duels if a person involved dies in Idaho. So this duel could take place just south of Idaho, let's say in Utah. Somebody could be standing on the other side of the state line. They could count it off, and they could get shot. And if they fell over dead into Idaho, Idaho would then have jurisdiction. Michael Kane from the Idaho Sheriff's Association called the rule completely obsolete. It screams, doesn't it? It screams out for sunset provisions with all of our laws. When you've got a law like that that's still on the books, because we needed to control all of the scalawags and the blackguards of the time, but there don't seem to be all of that, many of them still with us. We have a telephone caller who's been looking to get a hold of us. Something terribly urgent must be on our caller's mind. It's 8:15:37 at our studios. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Bill Colley on Top Story. And you're on the air. Do you have a question or comment?
I have a comment. It's Friday. I don't know if you still do it, but Open Line Friday usually is whatever's on our mind. And I'd like to... No?
No, but you can go ahead.
I'd like some of the lefty people that listen to you explain to me how come when you guys were in control and we were stopping stuff, it was called obstructionist. But now that the wheels have changed and they're blocking everything that was coming, what is it called now? Is it still called obstructionist, or is it something else?
Isn't that funny? When it comes down to the filibuster, I'm seeing completely different editorials and op-ed pieces in newspapers about it than I did when Harry Reid was trying to manhandle the traditions of the Senate, and it's just a complete turnaround.
It's the same thing. The agenda that they were put into office for is trying to be pushed forward and stopped by the Democrats. But it's not called obstructionist because it's not what they want.
And thank you for the call. And it all comes back to this. You've got media that just cannot help itself. It feels it has to drag It's fellow travelers across the finish line. There was a story I saw last night, just before I went to bed. Don't remember this source exactly. I think I have saved it to Facebook. But it mentions how the media has been piling on, well, Scott Walker, who I mentioned a few minutes ago. You've seen this happen before. You saw it happen with both Mitt Romney and Rick Perry in 2012. They said, oh, Romney was a bully, possibly, in high school. Everyone knows he's a really nice guy now, but he may have been a bully when he was 15. And that, therefore, would mean that he is not the type of man we would want as president. And then we heard that Rick Perry used to go to a hunting lodge, which he rented. He didn't own it. And there was an word painted on a rock nearby because that's what the hill was called for a couple of centuries in Texas. And Perry had actually gone out and tried to cover it. Even though it wasn't his property, he tried to cover the rock with whitewash, but it just kept bleeding through. So this, apparently, according to establishment media, meant that Rick Perry endorsed the use of that word, which meant, of course, he cannot be president of the United States. And then if you go back to 2008, the New York Times claimed John McCain, in a sort of backhanded way, was having an affair with a young campaign staffer, even though no one else could find any evidence to the truth. Or how about all of the attacks against Herman Cain in 2012? All of these women kept coming forward, and everyone who knew Herman Cain said, this is people, we know people in our lives, and sometimes they do things, and we say, I can't imagine they did that. But there were so many people who knew Herman Cain that said, nah, can't be. Then I believe that. And you had all of these women, though, who were coming forward making all of these accusations, and it was lead headlines, and it was the top story on every old alphabet-style newscast, ABC, NBC, CBS. And Herman Cain was forced from the race. But funny, as soon as he was no longer running for president, all of the accusers vanished, and the story vanished. Why didn't they continue with it? So you see what they were up to. Today, The Hill has a story, a fawning story about Hillary Clinton, who bought a mansion of her own. It says that she and her husband share their house in Chappaqua, New York, which is in Westchester County, suburban New York City, but that she has a home of her own in Washington, in Northwest Washington, where she conducts meetings and discusses her campaign. It's a great big old house. And I thought, well, as I was reading that story, clearly the media is proof positive that you can give a Lewinsky to a woman as well. It just shows you the double standard that we're dealing with at every aspect. And when we heard, when the Democrats were in control, and they had both houses of Congress for a few years, we heard the people had spoken, you got to shut up and you got to tag along. And now that Republicans hold both houses of Congress, it's like, well, you've got to represent all Americans. I'll tell you what, if all Americans didn't vote for me, I'll go with those who did and put me over the top. How's that for you? Trying to represent all Americans means you won't get anything done, surely. I think our founding fathers wanted gridlock in the first place because they thought that legislating wasn't really a great thing. As little government as possible is what they wanted. But of course, we're dealing with a new cult today that says government must control everything. On a lighter note, Ella Donahue from CSI joining us in just a couple of minutes to talk with us about what's going on at the campus over the next few days. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. As I was mentioning, we were going to spend a few minutes during the course of this hour talking about some events coming up at the College of... And Ella, I'm working on the microphone over here. There you go, because this is the first time you've sat at that microphone.
I know, it's a little different. I kind of like it. I'm a high up. I'm part of the team.
It's like when I us't to go truck driving with my uncle, it's like sitting in the cab. You see everything that goes on below and cars passing by. Yeah, it's a great bird's eye view. You've got a lot to talk about today. First of all, Doug sent along a sheet to me this morning, and you brought an exact duplicate. I want to talk about organization. You see, that's good organization going on over at CSI. But what is this? I think this has to do with incoming freshmen, right? This FAFSA?
Yes, it's called the FAFSA. And what it is you sit there and you fill it out with your parents' taxes as well as your own federal taxes 2014, and then it goes to the government and they're like, okay, this student really needs some help, so let's give them some help. And then they give you what's called a Pell Grant, and it's a grant, so you don't have to pay it back, but it really helps out. I mean, I've gotten through all my CSI schooling and I am in no debt at all whatsoever going into my university stuff, so it can be really, really helpful. So it's really important that people do it. And what they're doing tomorrow is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the CSI Health Science Building on North College. They're going to be doing this. They're going to have representatives there to help you fill it out, so it's not stressful your first time. And then if you come, you're also entered in to win for a $2,000 or $250 scholarship. So just come and do this and you can get entered in for the scholarship.
Depends on the size of the books. If they're thin, you might get 2.
Yeah. If you're an incoming student, that might get you maybe 1.5.
Oddly enough, books, though, people talk about inflation at colleges. Books, I haven't really seen a lot of book inflation because my books were just as expensive 30 years ago. So at least in one area, people may be getting not a break per se, but still, that hasn't, I don't think, radically changed. We wanted to mention right now, just quickly, if we could, 37 at our studios. It's 8:25. You're listening to Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Also anywhere online at newsradio1310.com. Ella Donahue joins us on Friday mornings from the College of Southern Idaho just to give us a rundown of some of the things that are going on around campus. And, of course, we had some stuff to talk about with basketball and baseball last week. But this week, there's for the cultured folks out there, I liked this one. One of the performers with the Magic Valley Symphony. First of all, I'm a big fan of the movie A Christmas Story. And the red-haired bully's name is Scott Farkas. Now, probably not any relation here, but
Probably not.
Scott Farkas is performing with the Magic Valley Symphony, right?
Yes, and he's a very talented musician and professor at CSI. So come and support him and watch him. It's going to be $10 for adults, $8 for seniors, and $6 for students. And that's going to be next Friday at 7:30 in the Fine Arts Auditorium.
I was going to say, he doesn't have like green eyes and red hair and a coonskin cap, does he?
No, he's got brown hair. And if he still has it, he might still have his beard.
Oh, okay. He doesn't look anything like the bully in the movie.
No.
All right. And oddly enough, I can't imagine that he'd be bullying people while he was trying to work on music.
Oh, heavens, no.
Yes, it doesn't seem to be quite the match. A couple of other things. You've been reiterating this over at the Herod Center. There's always something obviously going on, but
Yes.
especially in the winter, just to get people an opportunity to get out of the house and maybe do something that's a little different.
Yes, they have their Telescope Tuesdays, and then so during the winter months they have this at the Harriet Center for Arts and Science, and they're going to have an extra chance to view the sky through the big telescope, which, by the way, is fantastic. I did it last Saturday, and it is phenomenal, and they do so well of explaining what you're looking at. And it's going to be next Tuesday from 7:15 to 9 p.m., and it's only $1.50 per person. Now, this is like a big opportunity, and not many people can say that they have seen, the stars through a big telescope like the one that we have at CSI.
And then one other thing you'd like to mention too, although you might have to travel up to the mountains for this one, a snowshoeing demonstration or some sort of course involving that, right?
Yes, they're having, what it is the CSI Outdoor program is taking people, and it's only going to be $15 per person, and they provide the equipment and the transportation, and they're going to take everyone to the Craters of the Moon National Monument on the 28th, and it's going to be a lot of fun. You should totally check it out. And if you want to reserve your spot, call Krista at 732-6696.
We were talking about snowshoes, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
For the Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and from what I recall, having read about snowshoes, you have different types for different types of snowshoeing. For instance, the indigenous peoples, if they really wanted to make time, they had long, narrow snowshoes they would use. But then there are other types of shoes for just walking in depth of snow. So you could have some round snowshoes. You could have some that are oblong. And then, of course, when my daughter got her first pair, she had to be sized for them. I think she was 14 or so. And she had to go in and actually, they weighed her, looked at how tall she was. Some kids just grow, like beanpoles. But they had to take all of that into account. But I would imagine on this particular trip, they will help you out in that situation.
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yes, they provide equipment, and they'll help you set you up and take you there and show you, and they're very, very, very helpful.
Clearly, in the immediate Twin Falls area, snowshoeing didn't really take off this winter.
I don't think so. But we do have a call for snow sometime next week, or maybe it's just rain and snow in Mackey. I don't know.
Did you see the pictures out of Boston where the people were diving off the homes into the snow?
Yeah, I cannot believe how much snow is there. That is incredible. I wish we could get that here.
If you didn't remember where you parked the car, though, it could be a little dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a convertible.
Exactly. Face dive into your car.
Ella Donahue, thank you for taking some time with us.
Yes, thank you.
We'll see you again, next week?
Yes, sir.
8:30 right now at our studios. 37 is our temperature. News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story with Bill Colley. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we have a guest joining us from Idaho Right to Life. She's going to be talking with us about some new technology, which she opposes. There we go. Ella and I were having a conversation off air about country music. And I said, you don't normally play country music loud. It's not like rock. But I said certain dance tunes. That does happen. I went to see Billy Ray Cyrus in concert a few years ago, and I took along my daughter and one of her friends at a state fair, and they kept saying, can we go back to the rides? Can we go back to the rides? They must have been about 10, 12 years old at the time. Can we go back to the rides? Can we go back to the rides? And then all of a sudden he said, hey, by the way, he's up at the stage. He said, by the way, we are filming some segments here at the concert and some of the crowd too for my daughter's TV show, Hannah Montana. And with that, they completely forgot about the rides. They got up and started waving their arms in the air, hoping to catch the cameras. Children. He did the one song, though. He does the song about, and I've forgotten the exact title of it, but it's about the man, the old veteran in his hometown. And he performed that day at the concert. And it's one of the most, just before the end of summer, but it's one of the most moving songs I've ever heard. And to hear it actually performed live. The odd thing is, that song never had the popularity on the charts as the Simpleton song. I mean, what you just happened to hear. So and you know, he was recording certain songs they put down in front of him, and hey, some take off, some don't. But it's a shame sometimes when you see something that's really, really good, and it just doesn't get the airplay. But obviously, sometimes the tune is what people like more than the actual song, and and clearly sometimes message songs are just a niche. I mean, they don't really appeal necessarily to the general public. Achy Breaky Heart, on the other hand, I mean, I would hear people humming it at work. That's why you start bringing your Louisville Slugger to the office. It breaks that up really, really fast. 37, Bill Colley with you at 8:35 this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story. Do want to remind you, speaking of Ella being here, of course, she and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about driving big rigs, getting CDL licenses. And the other day we had some folks in studio with us talking about bus driving, school bus driving. Western States Bus Service hiring part-time bus drivers right now. Split shifts 5 days per week, summers off, and scheduled no school days. Pay is $10.75 per hour. You can apply today by contacting 733-8003. That's 733-8003. Western States Bus Services is an equal opportunity employer. So I just wanted to mention that this morning as we were moving along here. I have a guest in a few minutes who'll be joining us, and she had a guest editorial. By gosh, it's unusual to see something like this in a liberal paper like the Times News, but she had a guest editorial from Right to Life about an effort by Planned Parenthood, and what they'd like to do with modern technology is establish a network of cameras to better assist people in killing babies in their mother's wombs. And here you go again. It just completely flummoxes me how anyone can sit back and make an argument of the convenience of it and why it's necessary. And you hear the arguments made, well, what kind of life would that child lead? Well, we don't know now, do we? And so she's going to join us in just a few minutes to talk about Planned Parenthood and the opposition from Right to Life. There is a story today getting some attention around the country, and it's really got steam pouring out of the ears of Lefty. Comes out of North Dakota, where a state legislator has compared Planned Parenthood to ISIS. And this comes from a great blog called SayAnythingBlog.com, which is what has been voted, I think, consecutive years now, one of the top 100 political blogs in America. And a writer says a South Dakota state representative, all right, South Dakota is where they're writing about. The blog comes out of North Dakota. A South Dakota state representative compared ISIS beheadings to abortions performed by Planned Parenthood in an appeal to pass a bill that would ban certain abortion procedures in his state. Now, you know you're going to hear from people out there, no, it's not the same. What a terrible thing to say. But these ISIS guys, they actually believe in what they're doing. They believe they're commanded by God and their prophet to do these things. Then you've got people who are performing abortions, and they feel that this is the right thing to do from their secular beliefs, no matter how much pain it might cause. And so there you have it. I think it's an interesting comparison, and the more I think about it, the more I tend to agree with it. While we rightly take the speck out of our neighbor's eye by holding ISIS accountable, let us be sure to take the plank out of our own eye by holding Planned Parenthood accountable, wrote GOP Representative Isaac Lateral. He pointed out that South Dakota's Department of Health's website shows at least 7 such extreme and dangerous abortions have been done since 2008, and that is where the children were dismembered in the womb. And the practice goes on. And this, and again, we get back to the consultant-driven talk radio that says, don't talk about this subject. It turns people off. It's not a winning situation to make the argument. But by gosh, at some point, you've got to stand back and you've got to say what's right and wrong in this world. And I feel so strongly about this. It's a topic that I just can't imagine that we are still talking about this in this country after all of these years with what science has come forward and showed us about the nature of that baby in the womb and the pain that it actually feels. And yet you've got folks on the left who just want to completely overlook that, as I said, for a matter of convenience. We have a guest joining us from Idaho Right to Life in just a couple of minutes. She'll be joining us and spending some time talking about some similar worries here in the state of Idaho. That's on the way. It's 8:40, at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story. My name is Bill Colley. As I was mentioning in the last segment of the program, there was an guest editorial this past weekend in the Times News here in Twin Falls, and I happened to see it. In fact, I was reading it just after I got out of church. And it struck me that technology is a great thing, but sometimes it can be employed in a manner that, it's almost uncivilized. And I think back to those stories about Zyklon B being dropped down through the roofs of various buildings in concentration camps and people being told it was the showers. And there you go. There's a use of technology that clearly is inhumane. And I decided to give a shout out to some of the people who were looking at this situation and saying, we've got a problem here. And first of all, I have a guest with us joining us from Idaho Right to Life. Carrie, is the last name pronounced Uhlenkott?
Yes, it is. Carrie Uhlenkott.
I was going to guess at that all week long. I grew up in a neighborhood where we had very few people of German ancestry, for instance. But then I lived in a part of the country for a while where my whole neighborhood was. So I learned a lot of different pronunciations. And you're with Idaho Right to Life.
Yes, we're, with Right to Life of Idaho. I'm the legislative coordinator for this organization.
There is apparently Planned Parenthood has an idea of using some long-distance webcams, in a sense, from what I gathered, to assist with the performing of abortions. Am I reading that correctly?
That is absolutely correct. Planned Parenthood has initiated plans nationwide to install what are called webcam facilities in all of the states. And in Idaho, we have had convincing evidence that they want to install these webcam facilities here down in our state. As they've done in Iowa, they began the webcam facilities in Iowa in 2008. But if this becomes a reality, webcam abortions could be done here. How
is that done? Is there a doctor on one end instructing someone who may not necessarily have medical skills, or are they instructing another doctor who doesn't necessarily on a regular basis perform an abortion?
What we've seen is happening in Iowa and other states that have implemented webcam. The webcam abortion is enabled by a video conferencing system that actually replaces the face-to-face consultation between the doctor and the patient. The doctor never directly examines the patient, but he's located at one central Planned Parenthood facility and then talks with a woman who could be located at a satellite facility miles and hours away. This, again, what we had said before, this satellite facility and the mother could be miles or hours away from the doctor, where no physician is actually present to examine her.
So somebody on the other end, though, is still using tools and the like and may not be qualified.
What happens is if when the woman is conferencing with the doctor via the webcam, if she decides to have the chemical abortion, the doctor will enter a command which opens a drawer remotely at the woman's location. And this drawer contains these very two potent drugs which will kill and expel her unborn child. And the first drug is mifepristone, which is a cocktail of RU-486, whose only purpose is to terminate the child. And this drug will gradually kill her unborn child over the next couple of days. She is then instructed to take the second drug at home and administer it to herself. And imagine that. Here's this woman is home alone, administering a very potent drug that will stimulate powerful uterine contractions to expel the dead baby. And then the mother will deliver her dead child at home alone.
It is very cold. 8:48 is our time. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story with Bill Colley. 38 at our studios. Our guest is Carrie Uhlenkott. She is joining us from Right to Life, Idaho, and talking about this this procedure that I think some of us would find to be an obscenity. You know, there were a number of years ago, I was working at a talk radio station in upstate New York, and there was a bill proposed by a local member, a Democrat working in the assembly, state assembly, and wanted to ban people from going to these websites where you can hunt animals via your computer. And she thought it was barbaric and the like. I should point out she was also a Roman Catholic, but she was of the Nancy Pelosi wing of the party. And of course, she was more concerned about deer in a forest in Texas than obviously. And so at least here in Idaho, I think there are people who are looking at this saying we can't have this, right?
That's right. I think they see it. I mean, of course, we would rather that these chemicals not be used at all. But unfortunately, they are legal. They are legal, but at least what we want to do is to protect the woman's health and to make sure that the physician is present. If we are successful in passing this legislation, and I think we have a very, very good chance of doing so, then the webcam facilities would be banned.
What's the name of the actual bill numbered in case people wanted to speak to a legislator about it?
In my article, it was at that point it was HB 88, but after it was printed the first time, the Idaho Medical Association asked us to make a few revisions, which we took a week and all decided to do so, and so we reprinted the bill, and it was HB 154. And it's the title is Physician Physical Presence Women Protection Act. It is HB 154.
I hear so many people, especially among the politically correct, talking about how we can't hurt other people's feelings and because we don't want to disturb their psychological makeup. But when you mentioned a woman would be at home alone and give birth to a dead baby, it seems to me that runs counter to everything they argue about.
Yes, and the women are being told that that it's being marketed as safe and easy, and that they can do this in the privacy of their own home. That it's just products of conception, it's just tissue. But we've had stories here in Idaho of women doing this, receiving this process, going home alone and delivering a baby, and then just being very psychologically wounded by this, and having to undergo psychological counseling, because she actually took the drug herself to kill her unborn baby, and so it's very traumatic for her. And living in the house where this happened is very traumatic for her.
Yeah, it's like having someone die in the house. Or a friend of mine who once bought a house where there'd been a homicide before he moved in. It's always in the back of your mind that the disturbing nature of all of this. When you're in Boise and you're obviously lobbying various legislators, I would take it that most of them are sympathetic, but your bill basically says we should have a doctor present. There's still not really much of an effort to say, how can we start to reduce the number of these from happening, other than prayer, I guess. How can we reduce that?
Yes, well, Bill, this bill would stop many abortions. In Iowa, when the webcam facilities were started to be installed, the abortion rate went up dramatically. And so if this happens here, the same thing would happen, because it's very easy. It's quite easy for the Planned Parenthood and economical for the Planned Parenthood to set up these satellite facilities in rural areas. And it would be there would be much more access to women having abortions then.
When we talk about this issue, and you mentioned counseling and the like, if there are women out there today who have been through an experience like this, and a lot of them don't know where to go afterward when they suddenly realize, especially those women who may have had some sort of a conversion in their life, perhaps grown closer to God, and now they're looking, they're guilt-ridden, they are having psychological trauma for it. Where would you recommend that they go?
There's a wonderful post-abortive ministry in Boise, Rachel's Vineyard, post-abortive for post-abortive women. Some of their people will be there to testify as well, because they have counseled women and helped them during heal after this type of traumatic experience. So that's what I would recommend. Or there are other post-abortive ministries too, like Rachel's Project. But in Boise, we have the Rachel's Vineyard.
I was just sharing with the audience in the segment before we began talking a story out of South Dakota where a state legislator, in one of the bills that he introduced, he compared this abominable practice to what ISIS does. He's been roundly criticized in the media, but he said, no, stand back for a moment and look at what we're talking about. When he talked about how sometimes babies are dismembered in wombs, he said, and the people on the other side of the world who are killing people are doing it and believe they're right. And so he's trying to draw a parallel here. He's taking a lot of criticism and a lot of flack from that. But I think if people actually did stand back and sometimes start to give some thought as to what actually happens here, it would generally change a lot of minds.
I think so too. Also, I think it's good to be aware of this government study that was recently. It was a government document that was released in April of 2011, and where the FDA actually admitted and indicated that they had received more than 2,200 reports of adverse complications associated with these type of chemicals that are being given to these women. It's not the safe, easy, and effective abortion that it's being promoted to be. We had more than 600 women that had been hospitalized. More than half of these losing so much blood that they had to require transfusions. Some of the common complications are infection. There have been 14 deaths in the United States alone from these procedures. So this is putting forth this type of bill will help, of course, help save women and help protect their unborn child too.
For people, we've got just a few seconds left. For people who are interested in the mission of Right to Life, what would you recommend they do? Is there a website somewhere you can direct them for more details?
Yes, we have the Facebook, Right to Life of Idaho. We're on Facebook, and we also have a website.
Super.
And also they can also email RTLI or Carrie@rtli.org and contact me directly if they have any further questions on this legislation.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking some time with us on somewhat short notice today. And gosh, I wish you great luck with the effort with this bill.
Oh, and thank you so much. We encourage everyone to call their legislators to encourage them to support the bill. It's going to be in the House State Affairs on Monday.
Well, Carrie Uhlencott, have a great weekend, and look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Bill.
Take care now. Carrie Uhlencott, as she mentioned, from Right to Life, Idaho, chatting with us this morning about Planned Parenthood efforts to install these video cams where they can do abortions remotely in order to gin up the murder mills, I guess. And I'm not afraid to say that. And we've got people, obviously, on the other side who are trying to say stop. And she is among those people who are saying we need to stand back and we need to reconsider this and take a closer look at it and what the implications are to us culturally and really morally. 8:58. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. It's 39 at our studios. Coming up in the next segment of the program following Fox News at 9 o'clock, one of my old co-workers and friends joining me. He's one of the foremost experts on the Second Amendment in the country today. His name is Doug Beatty. He's actually been a lobbyist too, hammering away at his state legislature, and he's got some great stories to tell us. We may not have time for all of those, but he's coming up in just a few minutes. Hope you can stick around. Not long ago, I was a galley slave on something called the Good Ship Schumacher, and the fellow who sat rowing next to me was named Doug Beatty, and we worked together and thought we had a pretty good combination going. Unfortunately, the people we worked for begged to disagree and decided instead that that their goal in life were lower ratings and less revenue and the like, and so the Good Ship managed to put us off on an atoll somewhere down in the South Pacific. We have both still working on recovery from that experience, but I do want to point out he's doing much better now since he has gone on and he has moved on to what I would call underground radio, albeit he was always broadcasting somewhere from an underground bunker. 7 minutes after 9 o'clock, it's 38 at our studios. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I want to mention Doug Beatty is joining us for a few minutes this morning on the program. As I said yesterday, he is one of the foremost experts I know when it comes to the Second Amendment. And he's much more of an outdoorsman than I am, spends a great deal of his time fishing and hunting during his spare time. And first of all, I'd like to say welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's great to talk to you again.
I remember a gun story you told me once long ago where you were on patrol at, what was it, Union Station in Washington, and Al Gore came through and saw you and tried to drag you over the rope line while you were armed?
He went to shake my hand, and one of the aides started to open the rope line. They thought I was a D.C. police officer, and I told the Secret Service guy, I said, I'm a security guard on my way to work. I just need to get out of here. and he said, no problem, and he kind of deflected me around where the guy was trying to leave me, but he didn't grab me roughly. He touched my elbow very gently, but I felt paralyzed. It was an amazing experience. And I took my little security guard butt to work and was sorry I tried to walk across the front porch of Union Station. It was inauguration night, I think.
It was the secret touch of the Secret Service. They can paralyze you with just one little touch or look, right?
I'm not sure if all of them are just little ones, but I'm not going to go back and try and find out.
Hey, one thing that got your attention yesterday, I had posted something from a columnist at the New York Times who was complaining there's an effort underway in some of the states, in fact, that to band together and have a national concealed carry. And that would mean, for instance, if I were going shopping in Jackpot, Nevada, and I was driving just a few miles away from Twin Falls, Idaho, and I forgot that I wouldn't get in trouble if I was pulled over 5 miles across the state line. And yet we're seeing a great many people on the left who are really getting apoplectic about this.
Well, there was just a 72-year-old school teacher arrested in New Jersey for a 1700 splint-lock pistol that was unloaded that he told the police about when they stopped him for a traffic violation and asked him if he had anything dangerous in the car. He's facing 3.5 years in jail for that. They're going to prosecute him. So there is a certain amount of insanity to it. And as we were discussing, if I was a young lady who wanted to make a choice in women's health care that would result in me not delivering a baby, I wouldn't get arrested for going to another state and doing it, or anything like we're seeing people arrested for gun violations for.
Sure.
So if it's legal for you to do it in one state, and it's not illegal for you to do it in the, it's just crazy. Almost every state has some provision for concealed carry.
And of course, we're looking in Idaho at the possibility of even eliminating a permitting process for it. I'm sure they will ask people to take a training course, but The argument being that the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, and there are no other conditions.
Well, let me give you another argument I learned from a great man who's no longer with us, Aaron Zellman. He founded Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. I used to be his webmaster. Aaron said, look at it this way. What good does it do for you to fill out a permit and get a background check and everything so the public knows you're safe? Because a criminal's going to have a gun anyway, and they're not going to do all that. So what have you actually accomplished with this permitting process? What good have you done?
And I have a friend, he's been making the argument for years that it doesn't really matter, because if somebody is going to have a firearm and they're going to commit a crime, they'll find a way to do it. They don't need a permit.
And then the lefties say, well, then we need to get rid of more of the guns. I say lefties, I don't mean to be derisive. The people that lack common sense and have mental illnesses they will not treat that involve projection, denial, and reaction formation. But anyway, they say if we get rid of the guns, we won't have any crime. I'm like, you're right. Prisons are so safe because there's no guns in there.
Yes.
And nobody ever got killed before the first gun was invented.
Well, you think about it. There was a complaint the other day about the fact that there are, 300 some odd million guns in the United States. And so probably more guns now than there are people. If you
Definitely
have
more guns than cars.
Right. But if you have automobiles, for instance, if you have 50 automobiles on the road, you might have an accident. One of them could be deadly for every 50 trips. If you then have 100 automobiles on the road, you double that. But nobody is talking about outlawing automobiles.
And in fact, automobiles are actually more dangerous, especially if you factor in suicides.
Sure.
Because we know that people that commit suicides with firearms normally are pretty determined to die, and they're going to get it done anyway.
Right. Doug,
it's not a cry for attention.
One thing I want to do while you're on the program with 912 right now at our studios, 39 as well. It's going to be a somewhat of a warm day, cooling off for a couple of days. Unlike your part of the country, Doug, we've had a lot of sunshine lately and warmth, but I won't rub that in today.
Right on.
Since we both departed the galley, slave galleys, you have gone on and you are now doing an internet program, right?
Yes, I'm still doing double bad radio, but I'm not doing a whole lot with it right now at the moment. There's some things going on in the scenes we just can't talk about on the air right now.
Yes.
But it's doublebad.net. People can find a link to some of my older shows, and like the interview with the irritated genie and all the crazy stuff that they really poke around there. It seems like you're landing in a really nice place, and I'm glad to see the pics and the weather, and man, it's great. You seem to have a good audience out here, too. I was listening to the earlier shows.
And you can actually bungee jump into the Snake River Canyon.
Yeah, there's nothing like that in Delaware, so you made the right move.
Yes. That's the highest point in Sussex County, Delaware, above sea level when I moved there was 44 feet, and that was the county landfill. So I don't know that anybody was going out there and bungee jumping off the landfill.
And, euphemistically, we might say that was the high point of the place. But no, I won't go there because some people from back home are listening to your stream. So, Is my mic on? Uh-oh.
we were talking about this columnist, Gail Collins. She had a piece last week about Scott Walker that she had to retract. So, first of all, I think her credibility is a little shot. But I guess her belief is that if you actually have people who have, they're able to take concealed carry across state lines, if you have that enshrined, that somehow there are going to be people standing on every corner just firing shots off.
The same thing that was said by Art Buchwald, may he rest in peace, when Florida had the shell issue law. Remember his piece on the gunshine state?
Yes.
I mean, that was a famous liberal rant. And if they had Facebook back then, we would have been memmed to death with it on our timelines.
I have all of his books somewhere still on a shelf at home, and I used to read those columns because I thought that they were funny, but obviously there was usually a deeply embedded political message as well in all of that.
And you know my story in D.C. I know we're running out of time, but when they banned the guns, I was a child of liberal actors. We all celebrated. 30 years later, when I had to be a security guard in the public housing, I had a much different view.
Well, and I have a friend, I've mentioned him before on both radio stations, that lives in the D.C. area. He grew up there. Then he went off and served his country for 20 years in the military, 21 actually. He retired and worked for a time making films for the government of Bermuda, then worked in television news, and eventually just didn't need to work any longer. Military retirement isn't necessarily going to take care of you in a high lifestyle, but he could still live well. He moved back to Washington to take care of his mother. He lives just a short drive from the Navy Yard, and he had served there actually at one time. He'd been posted there for a while when he was younger. And when the shooting took place there, now this is a fellow who grew up in that city. When the shooting took place there, he expressed to me if people had been armed at work, that the carnage would have been greatly reduced. And we don't seem to be able to convince the people on the left that there is a deterrent factor going on here.
No, even when we talk about that unfortunate workplace violence incident in Fort Hood, I was debating that, because people felt the need to be armed. And I pointed out, I said, well, maybe they are paranoid, but the only thing that stopped my old friend's son, Major Hassan, from killing more people was somebody with a gun. And the only reason he killed so many soldiers was they didn't have their guns with them. And,
of course, just to mention a little background on that, since you had lived in the D.C. area, you knew Major Hassan's parents, right, because they ran a restaurant in the area.
Actually in the Roanoke Valley where I lived for several years, and that's not a unique thing. Malik was a businessman. He ran a restaurant. Everybody knew him. He's a politician in that matter. Very well-liked fellow. And
from your vantage point, I mean, if we had... the only thing I hear objections to all of this is that Sarah Brady used to be a regular on my old show before she moved back to Virginia. And you probably ran into her from time to time.
Sweet lady if you don't get on a certain subject.
Oh, yes. We both had encounters with her various times on the street in town. But she used to say that she was not opposed to gun ownership. She, of course, her concern was that a guy like Hinckley gets himself a firearm. She thought that there should be methods to deter that. Well, my concern is who's making the decision on what is mental illness?
And my problem is, since nobody had a problem with giving John Hinckley a car or any number of other means to commit violence. If someone we're really truly worried about them committing violence, why are they even out among us? Why aren't we watching them? Is that the best we can do?
In other words, maybe they should be locked up on as galley slaves on the good ship Schumacher.
Well, somebody we know that has a lot of name recognition, I'm not going to mention right now, has somebody with them 24 hours a day, but they're not locked down. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if they're that bad off, I just, sure, they shouldn't have a gun, but how do we even get there? Why did you let them handle the blender, the butcher knife, or the Ford truck?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Doug, very quickly again, what's the name of the website where people can hear some of your older programs?
They can find a link at doublebad.net. It's just a simple blog page, and they can also go to Blog Talk Radio, Double Bad Radio, and look for that.
I should also point out, and because everyone always brings it up to you, it's one of those crosses you have to bear your entire life, but everyone is always asking you how your dad's doing.
Dad has been doing pretty darn good lately, and people always ask me about his health. I say, well, he's getting pretty damn old. I think he's going to outlive all of us, but you might not realize it.
Yes. The other day I was talking about you on the show, maybe a week or so ago. We were sending messages back and forth while I was on the air. And unlike our old workplace, all the music here is loaded at random, and it just comes up. And
so that's beautiful.
I was mentioning you, and you can imagine what tune came up, and I said, he's going to think I'm doing this on purpose because he had to put up with all of those deliverance jokes all the way through school, and he's just frankly had enough of it. But it was completely at random, and it just, boom, there it was.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting way to grow up, and it was really interesting to observe other people when they interacted with Dad. My favorite one was the lady that said, "My God, do you know who you are?"
Yeah. See, did he pull out his ID and check it?
Yeah. Well, Bill, it's been great talking to you, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Yeah, great. Keep in touch, sir. We'll talk soon.
All righty. Have a good one.
All right. Doug Beatty joining us this morning for a few minutes on the program. As I said, Doug is one of the foremost experts when it comes to Second Amendment issues. As he pointed out, he used to actually be webmaster for some organizations related to that. And spending a few minutes with us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. My name is Bill Colley, 39 at our studios, 20 minutes after the hour. I have a lot more to talk about today coming up. Oh, Little Caesars has a new pizza. I want to talk about that in a few minutes. A bacon pizza, a really bacon pizza. I've been telling you the last couple of weeks about a great opportunity for people who are looking to earn a little extra money for their household. And that is Western States Bus Services hiring part-time bus drivers right now. This would be for driving school bus in the Twin Falls School District. Split shifts, 5 days per week, summers off, and scheduled no school days. Pay is $10.75 per hour. Apply today by contacting 733-8003. That's 733-8003. Western States Bus Services is an equal opportunity employer. We had some folks come by last Friday, so it's been a full week now. It didn't last long either. This is what happens when you have pizza. Somebody drops off pizza at work. People came by from Little Caesars Pizza, and they dropped off pizza for us. They have a new type of pie. Now, I have to admit, I love pizza. I never met a pizza that I didn't like. The last time I had a Caesars Pizza, I helped a couple of friends move into a new apartment in sometime about 1992 or 93. It's been that long. And we got Caesars Pizza afterwards because it was a cold winter day and everyone was trying to warm up. So we got some Caesars Pizza for dinner and some beverages. I almost said hot beverages, but they were actually quite cold, even though it was a cold day. But I was younger then. I could get away with that. And we sat down, and I remember thinking Caesars Pizza was pretty good. But what we had last week far exceeded my memories of what Caesars Pizza was. And it was a square pizza, a rectangular pizza, and it's a thicker crust. And it came with pepperoni, and it was really heavily covered with bacon. Delicious. And as I say, here at a radio station, when somebody brings something in like pizza, gone in minutes. There's a story out from News Republic that says Little Caesars is going to start selling pizza with a crust made out of 3.5 feet of bacon. And they have a picture of it here, too. It shows the pizza. It's very similar to what we looked at last week, what we had here last week, because we had the bacon toppings on it. But this one has bacon going all the way around the edges as bacon crust. So it's built right into the crust. And the reviews on it from people who've actually tried it say it's absolutely delicious. And they show a bunch of reactions here from social media, Twitter and the like, where people are reacting to the taste of it. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, you know what? The price per pie is only $12. And these are big pies. The price is only $12 per pie. And I was thinking, maybe I should have a couple shipped over to the Islamic Center. What do you think? Any takers? Oh, well, you know, it's not like we're doing any harm to anyone. In fact, I think that they would actually be polite and probably just decline it. Or if they accepted it, they would give it to somebody else in the neighborhood. I don't think that it would start any great conflagration in the city. I don't think that would happen at that point. But it's an opportunity for us to say hello and show that we're not all bad people on the other side of the equation. On the other hand, they would probably be supporting then a new recommendation coming from a government agency that says you've got to stop eating meat. That would include bacon. Now, some of us aren't allowed to eat meat today. Well, we could, but the old priests told us we would go to hell if we did. I think that we're just not supposed to do it because we're supposed to be showing that we can deny ourselves. And that's the important part of that. So today I'm not eating any pizza with any meat toppings. And I can't have the chicken that I cooked the other day and I have some leftovers. And I can't have the sausage, I guess it's chorizo. I can't have that's in the refrigerator. I've got to put off all of this until tomorrow. But the government would like you to put it off for good. This is from the Washington Post. Stop eating so much meat, top U.S. nutritional panel says. Now, you can tell these people were liberals because they don't like the idea of meat in the first place. So they have to find a way to sell it to you because they've been telling you for the last 40 years, that red meat's going to kill you. Don't eat. I told you, don't eat that. Stop it. Stop it right now. You got a guy like Michael Bloomberg comes along and he wants to ensure that you don't do it by shackling you so you can't get near the table. The writer says the country's foremost nutrition advisory panel. Now, how do they say foremost? Isn't that a judgment? That's not actually factual. That's a judgment. Foremost nutritional advisory panel is taking a stand against meat. Americans should eat less of it, top experts say, in order to protect the environment. Well, they've been saying that for a long time. So what's news in that first sentence? The recommendation could have a significant impact on the amount of meat people eat, as well as, and here's the real key, as well as the environmental impact of a carnivorous nation. Oh, wait a second. So we see it now. The granola-chomping, Volvo-driving liberals have gotten involved in the research here, and they're making recommendations that we should all put on our hemp clothing and play a little hacky sack and live just like they do. And here's a quote. Consistent evidence indicates that, in general, a dietary pattern that is higher in plant-based foods, such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, and lower in animal-based foods is more health-promoting and is associated with lesser environmental impact than is the current average U.S. diet, the report says. You know, I would eat a lot more of those beans and legumes and the like, but I'll tell you what, there's a reason that I work alone in this broadcast booth. That's because nobody else wants to be around me when I'm eating those foods. It's not, you heard about something called the backfire bomber way back in the 1970s. Well, let me tell you what. I eat any of those high foods, high in, carbohydrates and fiber, and I've got some issues that I have to deal with, and so do my coworkers. On the other hand, if you eat a little bit more meat, you got that protein going in your diet. It actually helps cure the satiation, as they call it, right? You wouldn't be so hungry all the time. So that's what the ultimate goal is here, is to get you all eating more granola bars and sitting around, and I guess we'll be like the Kelvins in Star Trek, just eat out of a little Pez dispenser. We've got more coming up. Bill Colley with you on this Friday morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. A couple of other things I'd like to talk about before we wrap up today. I do have to point out, I think when I talk to old friends, like the one I was talking to about half an hour ago, and one of the first things I tell them is that 2/3 of Idaho is owned by the federal government. They're absolutely floored by that figure. In fact, all across the western states, the mountain region, we have that going on. And a lot of people say it's time to turn that around. Not Rand Paul, his dad actually, Ron Paul, was giving a speech the other day. It got a lot of coverage, where he said that he thinks we're in the beginning stirrings of a secessionist movement in this country. And a lot of people think that he's recommending that, and he did say he thinks it would be a good thing. I think he believes it's a good thing only because it might wake Washington up. And people will start to say, all right, let's talk to the folks in these western states or in these southern states where they may have some issues with the big government that is trying to Bigfoot everyone in its path. But I think that he's right that there are stirrings out there. We see those stirrings in some of the arguments people are making against all of the federal lands. We saw that in Nevada not long ago. We have people who would like to, use lands to graze animals, and this is what their ancestors did, and unfortunately the government says, no, can't do it. Oh, if you live back east, you could do it, but because you live in this part of the country, you can't do it. So you don't really have the same rights in that sense, property rights that anyone else would have in other parts of the country. 9:35, 40 at our studios. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And that means, of course, on the web, you can hear us anywhere all over the world. Just a couple of days ago, the President of the United States declared the Brown Canyon in Colorado a national monument, which means hands off. Got to stay away from it. Forbidden zone. Yeah, it's kind of like that forbidden zone, I guess, in Planet of the Apes where you weren't supposed to go because you might learn things about the past that would help bring down the current order, that is, the current government. Washington Examiner, Republicans aim to curb Obama's monument designations. The president has used the Antiquities Act 16 times to declare public land as a national monument, ranking him above all other presidents since the law was enacted, except for Presidents Theodore Roosevelt, who designated 18 national monuments, and Bill Clinton, who named 21. And Obama has signaled he'll designate more national monuments before his term ends in 2 years, which could put him at the top of the list. But many Republicans believe the president's frequent designations constitute a federal land grab executed without local input. Of course. They're not asking anybody out there what they think about it. They don't care what you think about it. In their minds, you're going out and abusing the land. In their minds, you aren't smart enough to conserve the land or take care of it. They are, because they're living in the big city of Washington, D.C., 2,500 miles away. So therefore, they know what's best. And we're going to continually deal with that. And we've got some issues still in Idaho where people are talking about a monument, a new monument here in the state. And you've got to start saying to yourself, oh, yeah, isn't that nice? Is there bragging rights to how much federal land the government has in your state or how many monuments there are? I don't think so. I think at some point, first of all, no one is going to be grazing cattle in a big canyon, like we have here in Twin Falls. It's just not very practical. So you don't have to worry about that. And the other part of it is, yes, there are people who visit those areas. They still visit those areas, but it's not like people are swarming out there and we're not going down into the sides of canyons and building homes. It's not like that cartoon, Bugs Bunny cartoon. You may remember this. He's fighting the sheriff of Nottingham, and he runs into the King's Royal Gardens, and the sheriff follows, and the sheriff, stop. And so Bugs then pretends to be a real estate agent, and he's trying to sell some land there to the sheriff, and the sheriff, and Bugs says, well, there was a couple here from North Carolina this morning, and the sheriff says, I'll take it. And then in the next scene of the cartoon, you see the sheriff, and he's building the trusses on his house, pounding the nails in, and all of a sudden he realizes he's been had. So no one's going down and going to be, putting up shopping strips or malls in these canyons or anything else. I just don't see the need for all of this federal action. And when Ron Paul comes along and says people are fed up, they're fed up not only about land grabs, they're fed up about environmental rules. There's talk that we're going to see rolling brownouts across the country this summer because of the president's efforts to hamstring the electricity grid. Heck, we don't need an electronic pulse weapon used against us as long as he's in Washington. He'll do the same. So we're dealing with all of that. And just because they feel a certain way about the environment does not mean it's environmental policy. And it's not sound policy. And you've got states that are fighting because they have differing views because of, the composition of the public may have differing views when it comes to certain social issues, abortion, same-sex marriage, and the like. And yet you've got the federal government saying, no, one size has to fit all. Well, how much do you have in common in Idaho, Utah, or Nevada with someone in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, or Connecticut? Other than they speak English in a funny way and you speak English in a different way, you really may not have a whole heck of a lot in common with them when it comes to the way you live or what you believe or what you practice. And so Paul's comments, I think, make some great sense. And if nothing else, it would be a wake-up call to Washington. And I don't think that if we had a couple of dozen states that suddenly said we're not going to follow certain federal regulations, there's not a dang thing Washington could do to turn that around. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, the president wrapped up his terror summit yesterday. Yes, he's terrorized a great many Americans. We'll have more details on that on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Governor Mike Huckabee coming up in just a few minutes with the Huckabee Report right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. This is Top Story with Bill Colley. There is breaking news out of Washington. I've been getting these breaking news alerts throughout the show. Obamacare open enrollment extended to cover penalty payers. Now, why are they extending this? Well, because in their world, if, it doesn't matter. The law is whatever you say it is from day to day. So if you have to extend it to bring the numbers up, that's all it's about, right? You didn't get the desired numbers, so you move the goal line. Well, we can't seem to punch it in from the 1 yard line, so move it back to the 20. And that's how the left works. It's whatever. They get up in the morning and say, all right, this is what I believe today. It may not believe what I believed yesterday or be what I believed yesterday, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And don't think about the consequences, of course. Just go right ahead. The president just wrapped up his terror summit. I don't know what that means. What'd they do? Put on like Halloween masks and run around the White House? Blah, 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 blah. Michelle's children are just terribly spooked today. Sasha and Malia will not come out of their bedrooms. According to The Hill, this is a newspaper which is not a conservative publication. The headline is, Obama plays defense on Islam. All right, we're going to do a full court press so they don't come into our zone. But I'm going to let in a lot of refugees from Syria and have them play in our zone. But keep an eye on them. They may perhaps be playing for the other team. But since they all have the same last names as my father and stepfather, we'll let them in anyway. And that is a point to bring up because Glenn Beck was talking about this on his program. Some of you listen to Glenn Beck right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX. And Glenn Beck had something to say about all of this. Here's some of the quotes. I picked this up from The Blaze, one of his columnists, a fellow by the name of Wilson. Yeah, that's all the guy's name is, Wilson. We have one of those here, too. Beck said, someone told me this, and I think it's accurate. Let's think out loud for a second. The president is not a Muslim. He's not a hater. None of that, okay? His father and his stepfather were both Muslim. He grew up in Muslim countries. When he went to school, he claimed that he was a Muslim. That's because the culture he was living in, not because he's a secret Muslim or anything like that. Beck went on to say, he has, just like I do, and you do too, whatever it is in your life. You grew up, you had fond memories, you know your family members were like that, etc., etc., etc. You didn't grow up around a lot of Christians, so you come in and you see the people that you love and know under attack all the time, and you see the world from a different prism than us. You see America because you've been taught and raised your whole life that America is the bad guy, and they're racists, and they're haters, and they don't like anybody that's different from them, etc., etc., etc. So you come into office, and then Beck goes on to say that explains the president's actions as he's in the White House. And it's just abominable what we're seeing going on with the fact that now you've even got the Hill, though, which is a relatively benign presence when it comes to Washington reporting. Well, I think they lean to the left. So maybe not quite so benign, but they're saying that he is playing defense and that perhaps there's some issues going on here and that they need to be addressed. And then Peggy Noonan, who's one of the greatest writers in the United States. Peggy Noonan is the woman writing speeches for Ronald Reagan who wrote the great words that Reagan used that night when he spoke to the country after the Shuttle Challenger disaster. She has a Friday column every week in the Wall Street Journal, and she has quite a bit to say about this. I told you about this fellow writing the other day, Graham Wood, who wrote, in fact, it's posted at our Facebook page, KLIX, News Radio 1310 KLIX, our Facebook page. I posted this, and it's his article in The Atlantic about what's going on with this threat from overseas. And it has been cited now left and right by people all over the country who've had a chance to take a look at it. She did too as well. And she points out, he writes that ISIS wants to draw America into the fight. A U.S. invasion and occupation, he would argue, would be a propaganda victory for them because they've long said the U.S. has always intended to embark on a modern-day crusade. You know what? I don't care. Go ahead and do it. If it saves the planet and it saves the world for my daughter and my grandchildren, go ahead and do it. I don't care if they don't like it or not. I don't care if there's a public relations disaster in the hills of Afghanistan and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and Yemen and in Libya. I don't care if there's a public relations problem there because, in my mind, they've already got a public relations problem with me. She writes, the best of bad options, Mr. Wood believes, is to slowly bleed ISIS through airstrikes and proxy warfare. I heard yesterday on The Five on Fox that we're going to train 20,000 Iraqis to fight them. How has training Iraqis in the past in any way helped us? We've done it, and all they do is throw down their arms when they're approached and run. Or they take their arms and they join the other side. So trying to train Iraqis is a fool's errand. That's coming out of the White House, though, as the plan right now. And she points out that the writer of the piece that she's quoting, or she's citing, says it would be a very slow process to try to gradually degrade ISIS. And then she also went on to mock the White House spokesperson, the State Department spokeswoman, who said that all they need to do is find them jobs because they need opportunities. And she said, it isn't about getting a job. They already have one. Waging jihad. Spot on. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, couple of seconds actually, the Huckabee Report, brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls. You can reach them 736-6563. That telephone number again is 736-6563. And thank you, Governor Huckabee. I just had an email from a friend, and he's making a comment that I think dovetails well with what we were talking about at the top of the hour. That was just after the 9 o'clock news. Top of the hour's radio parlance doesn't mean anything to most everybody else. He says that the story coming out of northern Idaho, where the prisoner who had escaped from jail, Roy Beluk, he said this story screams out about a need for Second Amendment rights because Beluk, a homeowner, found Beluk on his porch after his dog started barking. And when Beluk charged the guy shot him. Now, he didn't kill him, but he disabled him, and Beluk is back in jail after being treated at a hospital. Ergo, Sometimes self-defense is a wonderful thing. And sometimes self-defense with a firearm is a wonderful thing. I know people have been arguing for the last few weeks on the other side about this. Well, we've had a couple of high-profile accidents with guns in Idaho, and therefore we shouldn't. And I know where that goes every time you hear it. It's 9:55. Bill Colley with you on Top Story at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Rush Limbaugh will follow news at 10 o'clock. Sean Hannity follows Fox News at 1 o'clock, and Glenn Beck after the news at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Here's the thing. If the woman who was shot by her son accidentally in the Walmart, if that had taken place anywhere else, it wouldn't have garnered the same media attention. The story got covered because it's the incongruity of it happening in a giant Walmart. Okay? Plus, Walmart's also a media enemy, and Walmart sells firearms. So you understand why the media was all over that story. You have accidental shootings, that's true. But we hear very few stories about this fellow shooting this escaped convict, Roy Bieluk, and then and saving his potentially his life and his property, and maybe the lives of his family members. That doesn't get a lot of play, does it? If there are 330 million people in this country, that's a rough estimate because, we don't know if there's 10 million illegal immigrants or if there's 50 million illegal immigrants. Government says it can't keep track of them any longer. But we know that you probably in any population of that size are going to have various accidents and various aberrant behaviors that take place. But the overwhelming number of those 330 million people did not shoot someone yesterday accidentally or on purpose. And the numbers are actually astronomically high. You are talking about a percentage that is probably 99.9999999 some percent did not whip out a firearm and say, oops, I'm sorry, or hey, I'm going to get you. It didn't happen like that. 330 million people, and almost every one of them was well behaved yesterday and will be again today and tomorrow and the day after. So for all of the gun confiscation wackos out there, I think you need to consider all of that. And this fellow who took down the escaped prisoner, well, one bad guy back in jail, one good guy still safe. Seems to me it's a pretty good bargain. We have to mention very quickly, I will be this afternoon at the Home and Garden Show. I'll be manning a booth there doing public address announcements between 3 and 5 o'clock this afternoon. I will also be back there on Sunday, I believe between 1 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Hopefully I'll be able to see some of you there. In the meantime, as I was mentioning just a minute ago, Rush Limbaugh is coming up next, following Fox News at 10 o'clock. My name is Bill Colley. This is Top Story. And God willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be back here 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Hope to see all of you then.